When I started working on Splice, I felt that as much as I could, I wanted to stay true to the real science of genetics. And so I had the good fortune of knowing somebody who was a geneticist, and he sort of acted as my unofficial consultant as I was writing. And the thing that surprised me the most was that when I would present him with a concept, he almost inevitably said, yeah, that works. And I would always, and I presented him with some pretty outlandish ideas, but he would, more often than not, top my ideas. He would say, yeah, that works, and you could do this. And what I began to realize is that within the science of genetics, there's an enormous bandwidth for what is possible. There, as Ian, the consultant, would have said, if you were talking to him now, there are things in Splice that are highly unlikely, but they're not impossible. And an example of that would be the fact that Clive and Elsa managed to create Dren in the first try. When they cloned Dolly, the sheep, it took hundreds, if not thousands, of attempts for that clone to work. So it's unlikely that Clive and Elsa would have got Dren right the first time, but it's not impossible. And I think sort of staying that close or that intimate to the reality of the science gives a kind of gravitas to the film that it wouldn't have if we were just, making this into purely science fiction. And then the other shocking thing that I realized in the making of this movie or discovered in the making of the movie, was that the real science was catching up with my fiction. If anything, it's maybe eclipsing it. And as an example, it took less time for scientists to map the entire human genome than it did for me to finish the script. The science is evolving exponentially, and it's really actually quite shocking. By the time we started shooting the movie, the UK had legalized the creation of animal-human hybrids. So what you see in Splice is science fiction. It's definitely fantasy. It's not a documentary, but it's not so far from the truth.